Georgia's ruling party has promised to withdraw a controversial draft law in the face of mass protests and widespread international criticism. Thousands of protesters have taken to the streets in Tbilisi this week in anger as a Russian-style law began its passage through parliament. Under the bill, non-government groups and media would be targeted if they take over 20% of funding from abroad. The main ruling party said it was pulling the bill unconditionally. Georgia has applied for candidate status of the European Union and sought to join NATO. EU officials had condemned the draft legislation as incompatible with EU values. In the United States, 3 Los Angeles police officers who were shot and wounded last night are now in stable condition while the suspect was found dead. Commander of the Los Angeles Police Department, Stacey Spell, says the suspect, a parolee on the run, wanted for an unknown felony, engaged police in a lengthy standoff. Several police cars had earlier sealed off the area around a garage in the Lincoln Heights neighborhood. Officers in full tactical gear were seen near the site where the suspected gunman was holed up.
The officers then returned fire, and as a result of that, 3 officers from the Metropolitan Canine Unit were struck. They were subsequently transported to a local hospital where they're currently in stable condition. And as they conducted a search of that area, they located the suspect, who was at that time non-responsive, and so they asked for Los Angeles Fire Department resources to come in. Medical personnel from the Los Angeles Fire Department arrived at the scene, made an assessment, and at that point, the suspect was declared, he was pronounced dead.
The Taliban governor of Afghanistan's northern Balkh province has been killed in an explosion that targeted his office. Mohammad Dawood Muzammil is the most senior official to be killed since the Taliban returned to power in 2021. He was reported to have led the fight against Islamic State militants in his previous posting as governor of the eastern province of Nangarhar. It's still unclear what caused the blast, as police say there was no immediate claim of responsibility. At least 1 other person died in the attack, with a number of others injured. An investigation is underway. Fire service workers continued rescue operations for the 2nd day as the death toll of a powerful blast at a commercial building in Bangladesh's capital, Dhaka, rose to 19. According to fire service officials, the 2nd day's rescue work started at 9. An army team also joined the effort. According to the fire service control room, 2 multi-storied buildings were damaged due to the explosion. None of the buildings reportedly collapsed completely, but the debris of the floors landed on pedestrians and caused serious injuries. More than 100 people were injured in the massive explosion. Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis says the country would work faster to modernize the country's transport system, and compensation will be provided to the families of train crash victims. The Prime Minister said, quote, "I consequently take responsibility. We're all to blame, and we should admit it with courage." He said the first priority would be to provide economic, psychological, and ethical support for families. He reiterated an apology to the public and called on protesters not to allow anger to split society. More than 60,000 people protested in Greece over the train collision, with demonstrations erupting in violence. The Palestinian Health Ministry says Israeli forces killed 3 Palestinians near a village close to the volatile West Bank of Jenin. According to local residents, Israeli forces also raided the village of Jabba, south of Jenin, surrounding a house where there was an exchange of fire. 1 person was arrested before the Israeli force withdrew. There was no immediate comment from the Israeli military, but Security Minister Itamar Ben issued a statement confirming the 3 dead and hailing the precise action and the elimination of those who opened fire on the fighters. Israeli forces have conducted nearly daily raids across the West Bank for months, making thousands of arrests and killing over 200 Palestinians, including both armed fighters and civilians. U.S. State Department spokesperson Ned Price says the United States is concerned about the flow of humanitarian aid into Aleppo after an airstrike knocked the city's airport out of service and forced the Syrian authorities to reroute flights carrying aid for people affected by last month's earthquake. Syrian authorities blamed Israel for the attack. Israel has for years been carrying out attacks against what it has described as Iran-linked targets in Syria, where Tehran's influence has grown since it began supporting President Bashar al-Assad in the civil war that began in 2011.
I can't speak to attribution, but we have seen these reports. I don't have any additional information I can share at this time. Let me say this, again, without speaking to the details of this, we would be concerned about the effects of any prolonged closure on the flow of humanitarian aid into those in need. This is an airport that has been a landing point for humanitarian assistance to those who have been affected in Syria by this devastating earthquake. And that would be a concern of ours if there was a prolonged closure and a prolonged impediment to the flow of humanitarian assistance.
Meanwhile, the United Nations Special Envoy for Syria has called on the warring sides there and the international community to revive efforts to find a political solution to a conflict that has devastated the country over more than a decade. Successive rounds of UN-backed talks over years have failed to make headway on finding a political solution to the 12-year civil war that has split Syria along frozen front lines. Speaking to reporters in Geneva, he called for the adoption of what he says is a step-for-step approach that would allow all sides to present what they are prepared to concede to reach a possible settlement.
There needs to be a genuine Syrian-led and owned political process facilitated by the United Nations. And there needs to be a coordinated international effort in support of this, with all key players working in a coherent effort. The international climate today may make a comprehensive solution impossible. We should still strive for it, but let's be frank, when we look at the war in Ukraine and the impact it is having, it's not helping us to facilitate this. But as I said, status quo cannot be acceptable. We need to move forward. A month ago, there was no prospect of the opening of more border crossings, nor of moves to ease sanctions in a concrete way. We have seen those moves now. What I want, what we need to see, is that this is applied when it comes to the political level. We need the same logic that was applied on the humanitarian front to now be applied on the political level.
Back here in Africa, millions of rural Somali people are facing unprecedented challenges to their food security, according to findings of a recently released food security survey. The Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, is calling for an urgent scale-up in emergency humanitarian aid alongside transformative actions to improve food and water security and people's resilience against climate change.
Strategic investment and transformative approaches must be made to sustainably improve food and water security for millions of Somali. Investment in strengthening existing early warning system, flexible funding for anticipatory actions, and area-based model approaches that have already existed is necessary. That will help us to break the cycle of year-on-year acute vulnerability, especially in rural communities. The need continues to rise. 6.5 million people are likely to be in acute and severe food insecurity stage, and this 200,000 people will be in famine situation of food insecurity. See, the support is not provided in the next 6 months.
Over in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where at least 36 villagers have been killed in renewed attacks by a rebel group. This is according to the governor of the North Kivu province in the east of the country. Kali Zanzu Katsvita posted on social media that the village of Mukondi had been burned to the ground by the ADF, which allies itself with the Islamists but seems more intent on exploiting the region's mineral riches. He has called for more troops to be deployed to neighboring villages south of the city of Beni to prevent further attacks. More than 20,000 people have been displaced in North Kivu in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo amid recent clashes between the Congolese army and the M23 armed group. According to UN spokesperson Farhan Haq, residents in the Kabrizi area, which is about 120 kilometers from Goma, were forced to flee due to fighting in surrounding villages.
More than 20,000 people have been displaced in North Kivu, in the east of the country, amid recent clashes between the Congolese army and the M23 armed group. Residents in the Kibirizi area, which is about 120 kilometers from Goma, were forced to flee due to fighting in surrounding villages. Over the past year, more than 800,000 people have been affected by renewed fighting between Congolese forces and the M23, according to authorities and our humanitarian colleagues. We call on all parties to the conflict to respect international humanitarian law, protect the civilian population, and secure access to populations in need of humanitarian assistance.
It is the month for women, and we're still celebrating equity in a fast-paced, technological-driven society, as well as the resilient spirit of women, are among topics discussed at the 25th edition of the Women Leaders Conference in Dubai. The two-day event, which coincides with the Global Women's Month celebrations, brought together women in various nationalities and Emirati women from the public and private sectors. Here's more on that event.
Business executives, government officials and leaders from the various sectors of the United Arab Emirates economy, as well as invited guests here at the 25th Global Women Leaders Conference in Dubai to continue the conversation of this year's International Women's Day.
There is no economy without women empowerment. At the same time, man empowerment. It's not only women, but since all was driven by men, we said, let's change it. Let's bring a mix to this culture, to this knowledge development and leadership.
Delivering the keynote of the day, Parliamentary State Secretary, Republic of Georgia, Dr. Anna Dolidze, speaks on how the gender pay gap is run, part responsible for low school enrollment for girls in rural communities in her country.
In many countries, including mine, where you must imagine that, okay, in the urban environment, this is not a problem, but in rural areas, where school is far away from the house, and where parents have to spend some money on transportation, they sometimes have to make a choice. Do I let my boy go to school or do I let my girl to school? And unfortunately, very often they decide for the boy. They can't afford both very often. And because sending a boy to school is often connected to earning power, this is a decision made in many, many poor families.
Speaking on a panel moderated by Mr. Ali Al-Kamali, CEO of the organizing body Data Matrix, women leaders discussed some challenges they face in society, as well as the need for better digital integration for Arab women.
Now more Chinese ladies, the Chinese ladies, they join the bigger companies, digital companies like Huawei, like Xiaomi, like Viva. So I think now technology and make the people and the bigger challenges and also make the life and more colorful. So now more young people and they join this field more and more.
The day's sessions come to an end after much engagement by participants on various similarities and differences in culture, as well as what equity means to Arab women.
There is quite a lot of misconception where people perceive the idea of the Arab world, Muslim world, specifically in the Gulf, that women don't have the rights. But if you look at the government of the UAE, there are 9 ministers, women ministers in the cabinet now. It started 2004 with 1 person, myself, and now we have 9. If you look at the parliament or Congress, 50% are women. There's a mandate through the government now supporting women in the board. So in any board of public companies, there's a mandate of at least 1 woman to be part of that board.
Organisers of the event now want the platform to be taken to other parts of the world so more women can get in on the conversation.
Let's move on now. The world-famous Oscars red carpet is no more. This year's carpet has a new color, champagne. The new carpet color was unveiled at the annual Oscars carpet rollouts in Los Angeles' storied Hollywood Boulevard just days before Sunday's ceremony. Oscars host Jimmy Kimmel, who was on hand for the carpet unveiling, said he was confident the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences had chosen the right color. The new color aims to create a day-to-night look. Life-size Oscar statues will also decorate the runway for Sunday's ceremony. And be prepared for pops of color and lots of sparkle on this year's Oscars carpet. The social media personality Curtis Newbill says celebrities have upped the stakes this award season and chosen bolder and more interesting looks. Browsing the rails at the Colt's Gaia West Hollywood flagship store, Newbill picked out his top trends and styles, predicting feathers, sequins, and bright colors to feature heavily on the Oscars carpet this Sunday. Newbill said his top tip for the day would be to find an outfit that suits the celebrities' energy and, of course, their sense of style. That's the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joker Rogers.